Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the Sankofa Global Project's GED plus EdTech Physics and Art Workshop hosted by our guest, Daniel Clark. I'm joined here with LaShawn Allen Muhammad, Central Brooklyn Economic Development Corporation's Executive Director, and Tony Robinson, the President of Digital Girl, Inc. We are excited that we are partnering together to do this workshop to give folks the opportunity to see that there's so much intersection between physics and art. I'm super excited that I'm going to have LaShawn and Tony talk a little bit about their program before we get started and before I formally introduce Daniel to everyone. LaShawn?
Thank you, Tracy. And again, good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad that you all were able to join us today. And just to give you a brief, overview of Central Brooklyn Economic Development Corporation. We are a organization located in the Brownsville section of Brooklyn. We're so happy to be, working with Sankofa Global, the Sankofa Global Project, and Tracy Gray and Digital Girl, Inc. around what, just expanding what we do in our adult literacy program. So, that's what I want to focus on, just sharing that we have open enrollment. If there's anyone who needs to complete their high school equivalency diploma, you are more than welcome to join our program, and you will hear from our partners and just to get us a glimpse of what happens when you join our program and what you get connected to and the information. We are very, very focused on helping people not just obtain their diploma, but to also obtain additional skills so that you know what your immediate next steps will be, whatever they may be, whether it is going directly to college, getting a better job or getting a job period, or starting your own business. And so I'll leave it there and pass the baton to Tony.
Hello, everyone. Tony Robinson. As I was introduced already, I'm with Digital Girl, Inc., which is an organization that was founded with the mission to expose inner city youth, particularly young women, because that was our focus, to STEM disciplines. And as we grew and started really getting out in the community and having our programs, we found that there were many young men who were also interested in STEM and did not have a place to go. So we did extend a lot of our programming to co-ed, to be co-ed, sorry, I'm a little tongue-tied today, but we did extend a lot of our programming to be co-ed, and we do welcome the young men as well. We do have specific programs that are just geared to young women, but we do want to take in the full community. And a lot of our programs, particularly what's being requested of us, is to do a lot of coding, website design. We're doing some robotics, some engineering. So we have a pre-engineering program and many other disciplines. So I'm Digital Girl, Inc., and I will put my information in the chat so anyone who's interested can reach out to us. And we offer a lot of our programming free to the participants, so you won't have to pay to participate in our classes.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Just to give you a brief overview, the GED plus EdTech program is an innovative venture in partnership with Central Brooklyn Economic Development Corporation and Digital Girl, Inc. For folks who've completed their GED and are looking for other opportunities, like LaShawn mentioned, we are super grateful for our sponsorship from Con Edison of New York and are really excited today about our workshop, Physics and Art. I'm delighted to introduce Daniel Clark, who is a director and an FX animator. A California, I keep wanting to say you're from California, Daniel, a Colorado native. He graduated in animation in 2014. Daniel's film credits include Finding Dory, Incredibles 2, Frozen 2, and most recently, Raya and the Last Dragon. In 2014, Daniel won the Student Academy Award for his short film, Owned, and he lives and works in the Bay Area. Today's workshop, before I turn it over to Daniel, aims to increase exposure to ed tech through physics and art, which are often viewed as separate disciplines. Daniel Clark's workshop specializes in creating realistic simulations based on the principles of animation. He uses art and physics to visualize abstract aspects of the physical world. A quote from Daniel says, "Often we are presented with art and physics as two separate disciplines, but in actuality, they are tied together at the most fundamental levels. Art relies on physics in medium, subject matter, and experience. And even the most brilliant minds would fail to comprehend the physical truths of our universe without art as their vehicle for comprehension." Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that introduction, and thanks for having me. And thanks for everyone who's here to participate. Yeah, so I got a workshop today. It is a presentation. It's kind of, it's like a formal presentation, but I would just want to say up front that this is definitely meant to be casual kind of workshop. So use the raise hand button on Zoom or type in the chat. And let's, as we go on, we can talk about stuff and ask any questions that you want along the way. It's totally fine.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Is that coming through all right?
Yep, perfect.
Cool. All right. Creating computer animation. So this is me. Like Tracy mentioned, I am a director and I'm an effects animator. Directors generally that's a pretty understood term. Effects animators gets a little more specific. I make things move in movies that aren't characters. That's kind of the broad understanding of that term. Here's a little bit of my filmography. In 2014, I directed a short film called Owned. Then that kind of got me into these bigger budget movies. And since then I've worked on Finding Dory, Cars 3, Incredibles 2, Frozen 2, and last year I worked on Raya and the Last Dragon. I'm not sure how many people have seen that, but I got some stuff from that in the presentation today. All right, jumping in. Oh, we got a hand.
Yes.
Oh, no, I was just acknowledging that I saw Raya in the last.
Oh.
Great movie, by the way. We loved it.
Yeah, it was a really fun movie. It was really special too for us. My wife is Filipino, and so the movie did draw on the Filipino heritage. So it was really special for our family to be a part of.
Yay.
All right, I'm going to jump in here and show you what's called my demo reel. This is just a collection of some of the stuff I've worked on for some of these movies, and it kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of what my portfolio is.
So Daniel, can you talk us through what you did for this?
Sure, yeah. This chunk here, I handled all the smoke monster effects and I turned all the characters into stone. This section here, I did the dragon's rain magic. Then Frozen 2, I did a bunch of Elsa's magic and this kind of stuff.
Wow. Can't wait to hear how you did this.
This was Fire and Magic. Did honey on this. And a lot of this stuff was just I did all of everything in the scene. This guy for the Incredibles, I did his superpowers, the lightning effects. And I worked on Jack, some of his superpowers too. This is dust and smoke, and Finding Dory, a bunch of water. Cool.
So fun.
There was music playing on that on my end. Does that come through the share on Zoom?
Yeah, I didn't.
Oh, it's just silent. Oh,
No.
okay. All right. That's good to know for the rest of the videos. Nice thing is none of them depend on the sound.
Yes, yes.
But you know.
Mhm.
All right. So we are talking today about the intersection of art and science. Like Tracy mentioned, these often get thought of separately, and they almost always are taught separately in school, which is fine. That's not a problem per se, but it is great to take a moment and to talk about the connection between the two and how much both of them are needed to complete the tasks done by both of them. On the art side, understanding physics, it actually affects every type of art you could think of. So something very traditional like painting, you talk to any painter and the type of brush that they use versus the medium of, the kind of paint that they're using, all of this affects the outcome of what the final image is looking like. And that has to do with the physical properties of those materials. Think of a musician who, someone who uses, especially like an instrument that uses their breath, they have to have a very clear understanding of the physical properties of how that instrument and how the wind goes through the instrument to make the sound. On the other end, on science, it's rare to be in any kind of science demonstration that there isn't a graphic or there isn't some kind of visual aid to help your brain understand what's going on. And those visual aids are almost never a photograph of any kind. It's some artistic representation trying to communicate the scientific idea. That's really what art is at its core. Art is kind of this elevated version of communication. The speech can be so limited in a lot of ways. So you put art on it and all of a sudden the brain can start understanding stuff it didn't before. All right, so today I'm going to walk through what we call our pipeline for making these kinds of projects, these kind of computer graphic projects. It's exciting because it takes so many people and so many different jobs to make these big projects. So that's what I want to kind of really focus on today, especially with the GED Plus theme of our workshop. All right, the first departments we're going to talk about are these first two, production and TDs. I'll talk about them together. This is our first example of art and science coming together. So on the left side, this is what we call the production crew. And these are producers or anyone else, managers, anyone who's managing the people and managing the process. And they're using communication skills and they're using emotional intelligence and that side of the brain to take what's a mechanical process, but have it done by people who are living, breathing creatures that aren't robots. So they're the glue that holds the whole thing together, and they handle everything from scheduling. They schedule meetings, but they also schedule the production, what work will be done when. They're responsible for bringing on the artists and making sure that everyone's on budget and everyone's communicating and everything's clear. On the right side is the engineers. TDs is the abbreviation that's often used in the industry. That stands for technical director. They're responsible for creating the software, creating the tools that we use in the computer to do our processes. So these two teams are coming at it. This is like your left side of the brain and your right side of the brain being supported every step of the way. All right, the first department to talk about is concept art. These are the painters. This is the very, very, very beginning of the process when there's just a story that's been thought of, just an idea, just a character. The concept team, what they do is they put their paintbrush to paper or their stylus to a screen and they paint up something. They come up with some idea, they take it from their brain and put it on paper. And concept artists are so fun because they tell huge stories in just one picture. Here's some of the early concept art for Frozen. And you can tell the story that's being told in these pictures here isn't the story that ended up being the final movie. This is when Elsa was actually not a sister to Anna. She was the Snow Queen living up in the mountains, and she was the antagonist. So these things go through all kinds of changes along the way. This was a very early direction that they had taken. The concept artist puts it on paper so that you can see that story from one image. Next department, storyboarding. Storyboarding, they draw lots and lots of pictures. It ends up kind of looking like this, kind of like a comic strip. This is the storyboarded sequence of A Whole New World from Aladdin. So this is Aladdin Jasmine riding the magic carpet and flying around and going all these places. Some of the stuff made it in the movie, some of it did not make it in the movie. There's a section here where they're flying over the Great Wall of China. And I don't think that ended up in the movie. It's been a little while, but I think that got cut. So the storyboard team, they put together these sequences, and this is the first time that the movie starts taking shape. Traditionally, these were, when it was all on paper, they would pin them up on a big board like this, and you'd sit down in front of them, and they would point to one panel at a time, like a lot like a comic book.
Yeah.
And they would tell you what was going on, and so you'd kind of watch it, and you'd feel like you were watching the movie. Nowadays, we tend to do it a little more in the computer, and we do stitch it together and kind of make little short movies out of them that we can watch, but it's the same technique at the core. The other thing to mention on this is that the art side of this department is pretty clear to see, but then the science part of this department, they're thinking about composition, and they're thinking about how the eye and the brain works. So each one of these little panels you look at, your eye goes to one place first off. It's generally the spot that's the most interesting on a panel. And that's actually where everyone's eye should go. If the artist is doing their job correctly, you're going to immediately go there first. That's where your eye will look. So there's a little bit of a science behind that, a little bit of understanding how the brain works to be able to direct people's eyes where they should be. Next department, modeling. So once we've decided we know what our movie's going to be, this is Rapunzel here. We're going to make a movie about Rapunzel. So we've designed her. The concept team has come up with what she looks like. The storyboard team knows what the movie's going to be. The modeler's the first one to get in there, and the modeling artist, it's kind of like I think about working like with clay. That's kind of a good way to think about this. They create the shape of the character, and then that'll be the basis that everything else for the movie relies on. These three departments we'll kind of talk about quickly here. Modeling, rigging is the next one. Rigging is the department who comes in and puts bones and skeletons inside of the character so that they can actually move. So this one's Elsa here. On the left is what we're used to seeing. On the right, that's actually all the controls that have been built in by the rigging department that the animators can grab in the computer and move to get performances out of.
Daniel, so when you talk about the bones, talk a little bit about more of that, because it never occurred to me that there had to be bones in creating this. Can you talk more about that, please?
Sure, yeah. The analogy I like to make is when if you think about traditional like stop animation, so like The Nightmare Before Christmas or Wallace and Gromit or things like that, they make the models out of clay, but inside the models there's actually a metal skeleton, and it's called an armature. And without that skeleton, they would bend all over the place, kind of like a rubber doll, and that would be impractical to get a performance out of. So instead they put bones and they put joints. So the elbow has a little joint inside the puppet, so you can only bend right there. It's kind of like a really elevated version of an action figure that has joints and bend. It bends all the right ways in all the right spots. So inside the computer, we have to do the same thing to make sure that there's, with on Elsa's face here, that the control that's being manipulated, where there's a spot in the middle that has a green, red, and blue arrow coming off of it. It's right at the corner of her mouth. When that control is pulled, it shouldn't pull the nose along with it, for instance. It should only pull the lips. So someone's job is going in there and making sure that control only controls that side of the lips. It also pulls the cheek up as well to kind of get a smile out of her.
When you say controls, how do they control it? Is it coding? Is it through, is that what's on the side here?
Nowadays, it is all it's all visual. There was a time when it was coding, yes.
Okay.
And that's the early Pixar movies, and I stand in awe of that, of people who worked like that, because that's an incredible amount of being able to visualize in your head what something would look like. Now most of it is done in the UI in the computer. So it would be the same way that you could like grab a window on your computer and move it around.
Mm-hmm.
You can grab a control on Elsa's face and move that around, and that'll help get an expression out of her.
Daniel, quick question
Yeah.
also. Can you explain a little bit what UI is? There may be some people who are not familiar with certain terms.
Sure, yeah, UI means user interface, and it's really just that thing we're looking at right there. So if you're inside of a painting program or even Microsoft Word or any kind of program, whatever the interface, whatever you as the user are interfacing with, that's the user interface. Everything outside of that is the back end stuff that all of the engineers are responsible for. So if you think about, if a paint program, you click on the paintbrush and then you can click on the paper and it leaves a little dot. That's you interfacing with the UI, the user interface. Some engineer has done a whole bunch of work ahead of time to make that possible to be done. And that's no different in our world.
So that brings up a question. So there are specific programs that you have to use or have to learn how to use in order to make this work, right? So what programs, could you talk a little bit, I'm sure it's a lot more complicated than what I'm saying, but if you could talk.
No, that's exactly right. The reason I'm laughing is because you learn a whole suite of them in school, and then every different studio you go to, they usually have made their own software that you then have to relearn at the studio. On Frozen 2, I jumped on that movie, and I jumped on it Monday, and I had work due on Friday, and I hadn't used any of the software that they were using on that part. So it was a learn on the fly kind of a job.
Wow.
That's a lot of tech, is that like it's a lot of like self-motivated kind of learning, and you really in all actuality, a lot of times, for this kind of specialized tasks that I do, whoever has brought me on the team, who's ever hired me, they actually don't know how to do it either. They're usually either they work in a different department, or they might be a producer or a manager or something like that. So there wouldn't really be someone for me to go and ask the question of how to do it in the first place.
Wow.
Just about figure it out.
Right. But you have to have a certain skill set even to know to do that, correct?
Yeah. And that sounds daunting, I know. But we do it all the time. If you think about, like, every time you download a new app on your phone, you use it a couple times, and the third time you're using it, you're very familiar with everything kind of going on.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. The last department here in the character creation world is surfacing. And that is taking Rapunzel here and putting all the textures on her. So these are all the colors. This is the type of materials the surfacing department handles. So the difference of hair with skin, with cloth, or in scales in the chameleon's case. And so if we were back on our example of thinking of, working out of clay, after that clay model has been created, it's someone's job to come in and paint it and put all of the materials on it to make it look realistic. So that's the character creation group, the modelers, the riggers, and the surfacers. And we can take a pause and say, is there anyone have any questions about any of that that anyone wants to know any more about, or has anything that they want to share about any of that?
This is the
If not,
time.
we can move on.
Yeah. I'm sure folks are taking it all in, and we'll definitely get to questions.
There is a lot. Yes, there's a lot.
There's a lot. Well, actually,
big.
Yes,
Yeah,
I do. So how long? So you finished animation school in 2014,
Yeah.
right? And so how long did it take for you to feel that you had some type of mastery over this?
I'll let you know someday.
Okay. Okay.
Let's see. When's the right time? I'd say it was probably 3 years in. I started feeling like less like a kindergartner and a little bit more like, okay, I kind of know what I'm doing here. But that would be. Oh yeah.
We got a question. What's your Antonius asks, what's your favorite part in the process?
My favorite part is effects, and that is down the road. That's my specialty. And we will get to that's in the next 3 departments. So I will definitely show you that one.
Okay, yay, sweet.
But I guess outside of my discipline, if I was to pick one, I think rigging is fascinating. I think putting the bones and skeletons inside the characters, they do even like the. So now when there's like big animals and stuff that have big mass to them, they actually put in the muscles as well. So they do bones and muscles, and it's to get, like, if you think of a horse galloping, as it flexes its legs and as it's digging its paws, you see all those muscles flex in the shoulders and the hind legs of the horse. So they put those muscles in underneath the skin, so that as the legs move, you see all that motion correctly. And then they'll also run simulations on it to get the mass feeling. Like dinosaurs or Godzilla or King Kong and stuff. When they move, you feel that they're very heavy, and that's because the muscles in there are being simulated to move along with the character.
Got another question. Another question. Can we get a live presentation of you drawing something?
Oh, that would be quite difficult today. I wish I could do that. I mean, I guess I could hold up a book, but you might be super underwhelmed with what you'd see. We might have time towards the end to do
okay, towards the end. Awesome, thank you.
But I do hope everyone has some paper and pen next to them, because there is a point where I will say, everyone draw something. It doesn't matter what it is. And so maybe I'll draw something and hold it up at that time too.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next department to talk about. The next 4 kind of go together as a group. These are the what we call shot departments. So we've talked about creating the assets. That's it. It's creating all the characters, and it would also be creating the sets that the characters will be acting on. Now we're moving into actually creating shots for the movie. First department to go is layout. Layout is responsible for the cameras and then the staging of the shots as well. So when layout's done, this is what their work looks like. So it's very unfinished. It doesn't look like a final polished movie. The characters aren't really moving very much or at all. They're just kind of being drug along. I compare this to like Nintendo 64 graphics, like really, it's just really basic the point of it is to show you get a sense, you understand the scene.
Right.
Mike Wazowski is riding on this little pig and Sully's chasing him. And that's what you need
Yep.
out of layout. Because once layout has put this shot together, then animation can get in there and start doing their work. And that's the next department. Here's what is called a shot breakdown for animation. And I'll kind of talk over it as it goes. This is the character Sven from Frozen. He's the reindeer. First thing they'll do is go in and draw what they want the action to look like so they can have an idea of what that acting is going to be. Then they'll take that model that's been created by the asset team and they'll do big poses. These are called key poses. Then the computer will go and do the in-between poses, the in-between the keys. And so this is another technique they'll do. They'll take little videos of themselves so then they can animate that action onto the character. So this is animation once they're starting to kind of get a look and a feel that they like for the scene. Here's the full polished animation. And then here's the final lighting and rendering for the movie.
Huge difference.
Huge difference, yeah. It takes a little while. It takes to make one shot like that. An animator, gee, how long would a shot like that take? I mean, probably 4 or 5 weeks. The animator worked on. That would be my guess. Maybe a little bit more because the reindeer has 4 legs. So more legs means more work.
Right. Fun. Wow. Cool. Yeah.
So that's for handling characters, and that is done by animators, and that's like the actors kind of animation. The next department is effects, and that's my discipline, and that's everything else that moves that aren't the characters. And in my department, we rely heavily on physics and science to get the motion and the movement out of our stuff. So I'll break down an example of this with this little fountain that I made. So I get the fountain from the asset team. Someone has built the fountain. Then I start pulling pieces out of it. So the first thing I'll pull out will be the basin that the water will collect in. I also pull out the little spout that the water is going to be running down. Then I'll go and put a little source. It's an emitter is what it's called. I'll put it right kind of just out of eyesight. So that's where the water stream is starting right there. And then I will turn on my fluid sim.
But how do you do that?
This is where all the work is. Yeah, so this is in this case that I am using a software called Houdini. That's my primary software, and it specializes in these kinds of simulations. So it would be, I'm pulling tricks out of the bag to make this work. So some engineer has done the work to take fluid dynamics and put them into this particular solver in the program. I had to take all that stuff in school. Luckily, I wasn't the one who had to make that part of the software.
Yes.
But I do understand it, which is nice because the data is exposed to me in a way that I can go in and start changing parts of, like if we're familiar with equations that create a graph. Like if we could graph a line, there might be a x equals y plus 2 or something, and we can get a line out of that. Mm-hmm. The crazier those equations get, the crazier the shape on the graph would be. And there is math that represents how water behaves and interacts with itself. So but
you said there's math?
There's math for that, and that is fluid dynamics. Yes. Fluid
dynamics. Wow. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the same kind of thing, that there's variables in there, and while every example is very different, it does rely on base math that is the same throughout water. If I was trying to make honey, or if I was trying to make like slushy water, like frozen water or something, I can start changing some of those variables in the math to make it stickier or to make it sloshier or various things like that. And that's where the art comes in. That's where the play really comes in.
Oh,
Is you kind of try stuff out and you hope you get something that kind of works.
yes,
And you
yes.
try it over and over and over until something starts to look right. So this example, this one, if you can see, they're very small, but there are tons of little blue points in there, and those are all little particles. So I would use the same solver if I was doing like sand in an hourglass or something like that. I would change some of the properties. Water is sticky; it sticks to itself and it beads up. Sand doesn't, so I would remove things like stickiness if I was making sand.
So
For instance.
there's some questions in the chat, but I want to ask, so when you say that you would change things, so are you actually mapping this out, like say on a graph? Like when we saw, I guess it was the rigging, that are you starting with the graph and making the changes there? So that's how you're able to, for your different points?
It is similar to that. Yeah,
Okay.
it's pretty similar to that. Yeah, it would be going back to the idea of like a user interface. The engineer who put together that solver has made a bit of a friendly interface that I can work with.
Mhm.
So a lot of these kind of variables are exposed in a way that I could get to them very quickly if I need to. Sometimes I have to break in deeper and kind of get deeper into the math and kind of go in roads that weren't planned out by the UI. So if we were talking with our paint example again, if you're trying to make a line in a paint program, that's a pretty easy thing to do.
Mhm.
But if you're trying to make a line made up of little stamps of pine trees or something, that can
Yes.
start getting a little bit harder. And so you as the user have to start doing a little more of the heavy lifting to make that happen in the software.
I have 2 questions. How did it feel working with Disney?
Yeah, well, I remember in my job interview, one of the questions was, what interests you about this job? And I was a kid in the 90s. Like, I thought that was like a funny question for Disney to ask. And I said to them like, oh, well, I like the work you do and I like your movies. And, like fulfillment of a childhood dream is on the list too.
Mhm.
And so I love working with Disney. They're tons of fun. They really, really care about the art. It's so nice. They give the time it takes to make something look really, really nice. It's not quite as breakneck speed as some other shops. Instead, they know that the work that they make is going to be viewed for generations. I mean, I would have no idea when people would stop watching Disney movies. We've all seen Snow White, and that's 100 years old now. So
Right.
they really let us take our time and make sure whatever we're making is kind of like a gift to generations, which is really fun.
Another question, what's the longest it took to make a movie?
Ooh, I was on, actually, I can think of a longer one. I was at Pixar when they finished Brave, and Brave took 6 years.
What?
That was a really long one.
Wow, 6 years. What takes the longest? I guess it's all of the pieces coming together, but 6 years. Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, it mostly is when movies generally when movies kind of start taking a long time, it generally is because something has gone, they've hit some speed bumps in the story department when they're actually writing the idea. And I know in Brave's case that was the example. They had several kind of redirections of them. Frozen also took, I think Frozen was 5 years, the first one, because again there was a bunch of changes, and
Right.
that one it depends on, I guess, where you put the starting line.
Mhm.
But I guess you could technically say Frozen was 100 years in the making, because Walt Disney optioned the rights to the Snow Queen right after finishing Snow White, and that was, he
Really?
wanted to make the Snow Queen right on the heels of it. And I think twice in the history of Disney they have tried to get that movie to work, and they really in storyboarding they couldn't ever make a movie that people wanted to watch. So it was the third time in the 2010s that they finally got it working and finally got a movie made. And so depends on where you want wherever you want to put the starting line, that was a long
Yes.
one too.
We've got a comment that the water here looks like I'm playing Minecraft with my son.
Yeah, it's all those little particles. Yeah, that or maybe it means the fountain also. But either way, like it all, like when we're working with computers, it's really we have to just make things smaller and smaller and smaller to do like the little particle. Each little particle in there is running its own fluid dynamics simulation, and it's taking information from the particles it's next to. If we were making water for real, that would be the water molecules. So the very, the smallest part of water is the molecule, and they're the things that stick to each other and bounce against each other. And we can't get that small. Our computers aren't strong enough for that. So
Yet.
we do them bigger. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we'll see. We do them a little bit bigger, and we kind of like squint an eye and we're like, yeah, that looks all right. We'll go with that.
Okay, awesome, sweet.
So we got these little particles here. The next thing I got to do is I have to turn it into what will be the final water surface. So that is the next slide here. And the way to think about this is that really I'm taking all those particles and I'm just wrapping them up with like saran wrap, basically. And so every little step, they're all just being wrapped, and we're getting the outside layer of all of that.
Wow, brilliant, just brilliant.
And then we can turn the lights on. Yeah, go ahead.
Turn the lights on. How long does it take for a character design to be finalized?
Ooh, that is a variable question. I'd say for a main character, especially for somewhere like Disney, we're talking a year, 2 years, perhaps, for the main characters. It could probably be as short as like 6 months. I know at Pixar, the fastest I saw on Finding Dory, there's a whale shark. She's actually in my portfolio. She like jumps out of the pool. And originally she was a killer whale. And then the documentary Blackfish came out, and it felt very, all of a sudden everyone was very uncomfortable putting a killer whale in the aquarium. And so they changed that to a whale shark. And I think that was like 3 weeks. They had it approved. They had the new character all ready to go.
Yeah. Okay.
So that was like the fastest I'd ever seen it happen. And it was for a motivated reason.
Yeah. Questions are coming in. What projects are you currently working on?
That is a great question. I'm actually working on a project with Tracy right now.
Yep.
We are. Yeah, it's we don't have a title for it yet, but it's a little short film. It's a little cartoon we're making, and it's a kids short film, but we do hope that it has an appeal, like the same way kind of Disney is for kids, but everyone kind of likes it. And it's about a 5 or 7 minute long short film. It's about characters living through the summer of 2020 together, and kind of embracing the difficulties of quarantine and with world events. I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole here, but they band together and they find unity and healing through the friendship that they have.
Which leads to another question. How has the pandemic affected your work and or contact with colleagues, engineers, and professionals?
Yeah, we are one of the lucky professions that we have been able to transition to all online. So one of the things is that we're on Zoom today instead of doing this in person.
Right. And
I'm in between other meetings doing this, which is really great. That's a really great thing that we can get so much done. But it has been a while since I've seen coworkers.
Yes.
Disney just mailed me a computer and they said, keep making stuff, and we would do our reviews like this, like exactly like this Zoom call we're doing. And so I would get on with the directors and they would tell me what they would want, and then I'd make my changes and bring it back to them. So yeah, I would say everything has changed, but really truly it doesn't feel like much changed for us. We're kind of just doing all the same stuff we were. It's all on the same computers and everything. It's just we're in our houses now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Another question. Is it more challenging to infuse your work into live action movies like superhero movies in a Marvel film?
That's a good question. That is, I think I don't know if I could I don't know if I could say which one's harder. I would say they're different. When we're doing animation, the difficult thing with animation is that you get nothing for free. So there's no sense of taking a video camera into a cartoon world and turning it on and hope you like what you see. That doesn't exist. Whereas in live action, you can do that. You could take a character out, onto the streets, and you get birds flying by, and you get the clouds of the day, and you get a whole city of buildings behind the person. You didn't build the buildings for that movie. You're just enjoying that view. In animation, every single thing has to be made by hand by someone. So that's why we have to be so careful about planning what the movie will look like. So I would say that's the difficulty in animation, is the scope of work. It's so much work. Live action, the difficulty in that one is that if your work is not quite perfect and you put it on top of live action plates, you immediately know it. And that's when people say bad CG. That's what they're
Oh, yes. So yeah, we've all seen
live
it.
action is very unforgiving. That's the difficulty there, I would say. I'm going to flip to the next slide here.
Okay.
And so you can see the final render. Oh, one more step. Sorry, this is creating the wetness map.
Oh,
So
wow.
what I do is I put the parts that I called out earlier, the basin and the spout, cover those with the same kind of particles. And then I run that simulation on top of them. Everywhere that the simulation touches, they're turning white, which means they're going to be part of the wet map now. So that part of the basin will get wet as the water goes over it. And here is what it looks like all together.
That's just insane. That's insane. It looks like real water.
That's what I'm going for. So
Wow. Wow. And all of that is art and physics together. How long did it take you to make this? How long did it take you to render this?
Oh, I think I got that probably in like 3 or 4 hours. This one was pretty quick.
Oh, that was easy?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's because this one, I kind of, I purposely made this to be a thing that I could get done easily and I could talk about easily. So there's no, there's no spaceship crashing into it. The basin is like a regular shape. It's not like a bottom of an ocean floor or something. I didn't put a lot of like white water or bubbles in it the way you'd see in like a beach. I left it more kind of like a faucet from a sink. So the fountain isn't moving. That's another thing that makes things very hard. So this is a very like cherry-picked example to be something that can be understood and talked about easily. Stuff gets pretty gnarly as it goes on.
Wow. So if I was a student that was interested in going further, I'm an artist, I do the only thing I know is 2D animation, flat, just flat, drawing flat. What would be a good next step for me as a student? You can look at YouTube videos and all kinds of fun things, but what would be a really logical next step for artists who want to continue? If you're a person like LaShawn's son does stop animation, or some of the students, folks here, I would love to see in the chat what folks are working on. If you are an artist, what you're working on, what would be a logical next step?
That is a great segue. I have a slide that says
Yay!
that. I'll jump over to that one right now.
Okay.
Actually, what should I be doing now? I get this question all the time, and most dinner parties I'm at as well. So the answer, the first answer is always draw. So have your pencil, have your paper, and just be drawing. And you want your pages of your sketchbook to look like this. It's just a bunch of drawings, just stuff you're seeing, stuff you're thinking about. It doesn't have to be perfect. They don't have to be finished. They don't have to be done. You know, they're kind of varying levels of completion on these pages here, but you can see that all of them they're fun. They're interesting. There was something that was inspiring to the artist behind these drawings, and so that's what you want. You want to develop that relationship with the craft, and you want to, you want to look forward to creating stuff. It really is really infectious. Once it's a thing that kind of gets in you, it's a thing you just want to do all the time. I was the kind of kid that I would always be like doodling on napkins when we go out to dinner, or like we'd go to like a something like a wedding or church or something, and they give you the program. I'd draw over that whole thing, and it was never any good, but that's not the point. The point is just you're just drawing, you're just having fun, it's just something you love to do.
Yes.
Then aside from drawing, if computer animation in particular is a discipline that's interesting to you, the resource I would point you to is Khan Academy, and they have a program that's called Pixar in a Box. So I'll click on this here. I might have to, there we go. Can you still see that? Can you still, okay. So this, and we can get the link out for this, but it should be pretty easy to find.
I'll find
Pixar in a Box.
Yep.
Yeah, if you Google
I'll put it in the chat.
Perfect. This is a great resource. This is Khan Academy. They're free online education organization. They have a huge library of stuff that are just free courses to take. They partnered with Pixar to put together a little computer animation program that is self-guided, and anyone with a computer can do from wherever they want. I would highlight this video, Math Meets Artistry, because we don't have sound. I'm not going to play it here in the meeting, but I would call out that one. That one is exactly the kind of thing we're talking about today, this intersection of science and art. That's an animator who talks about the way he uses math to make his art. This is the right way to say it. So the cool thing about this is there's all these different departments. These different courses, and these are the departments that we've talked about today. So there is simulation, which is like effects. There's rigging, animation. They have patterns here, which is what I called surfacing in our demonstration, character modeling, and these are self-guided courses. So I'm going to click on effects. We'll look at that one. So I'm interested in learning effects.
Yes.
There's all of these videos and activities to do. What's super cool about them is they have these little interactive demos you can do. So we've been talking a bunch about water. Now we could try making it. So this is a little simulation running here on my computer, or in my web browser, excuse me. So what I can do is turn up the flow rate to get more of these particles coming in. I could make the particles bigger if I wanted. I could turn gravity down if I want slow motion.
Wow.
I can turn it up if I wanted to be heavy. I can turn up the elasticity, which will make them start to bounce. There we go. Now we get kind of splashy water. I'm going to restart.
Very cool.
There we go. Really splashy kind of particles. Or we can turn that way down to get something that's really sticky, something like honey, or something that doesn't bounce. But all these little interactive tools, this is the introduction to learning water simulation that Khan Academy has put together. Then they'll have, as you kind of go through the courses, the demos, they'll start building on the stuff that's being taught about. So here is one. that you start with this big group of particles. This is like creating a wave. We can make not soft collisions.
Uh-huh.
And then we can start turning up the viscosity if we want something that's more like ooze, or if it's like oozy or anything like tar or something like that. You can make it viscous and it'll stick together. It won't do the same splashy
Viscosity.
stuff.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So you can see it's not doing the same thing of splashing off to the other side. Now it's sticking together as a big mass.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah, so all these departments, they have these little demos. They're tons of fun to play with. They're all fun. I would point out one that I had shown Tracy earlier, which is awesome, the hair simulation.
Yeah, I love that one.
Of course. Tons of fun with that one as well. There we go. So we got this. We have a head with hair on it, a rudimentary, and we can take this ball and kind of start to see the hair simulating in there. Now we can turn the gravity up if we want it to, be heavy, or if it's really heavy, that's usually like wet hair.
Mm-hmm.
Or we can turn the gravity all the way down and have this character look like they're underwater. So what's really great about this is exactly what I do for work, is I have like all these little controls exposed, and I'm like, how would I get a mermaid's hair? That's kind of like question. It's like, let's start like changing some of these numbers and see if I can start to get something that looks like a mermaid's hair.
Beautiful. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Got a few more questions for you.
Yeah.
Is there any desire for you to create or make your own movie from A to Z?
So I guess I would say one thing is that it would be quite impossible for me to work alone ever on a project. There's so much work that wouldn't be that would be kind of outside of reality. Now, in terms of writing and directing, that I have done a couple of times, and that is the project I'm working with Tracy right now. It's a little story about a friend of mine and my kids. So it's a lot of fun to put something, do a project that's so personal. And it's also a ton of fun getting to execute your own vision and to really, because on the movies you get put on, like, if you're working for a big studio, the director is the one with the vision and they're the one telling you what to make. And so you may have this really wonderful idea about what you think it should be, but at the end of the day, it's the director's call of what it is going to be.
Yes.
So it is very satisfying to have that ability to be the creative vision behind whatever art we're making.
I got another question. So excited to hear about your upcoming collaboration. Is there an opportunity for our GED students to assist with story content for your project?
Oh, that is a tremendous offer. I really appreciate that. We just locked the script this week. So in terms of story content, we just wrapped up on that. As we start getting it together, what I can do is I can make sure that maybe every like 3 months or so, I can send over just a little bundle to Tracy, and she can update you and show you some of the stuff we're working on. And then when we're done, we can do a presentation of it as well and see it all together.
Yeah, great, excellent. Okay. They say thank you. Khan Academy is the best online tool to use, especially introduce a new concept. I use it all the time. Love this. This is so cool. This is so beautiful. Yes, yes.
Awesome.
So
all right.
I do have another question. I'm sorry, Daniel. I do
Yeah,
have another question. And so the reason why I asked that question is because I really, as we all know, those who are educators, for people to really be connected to a thing, they have to the practical application is really important. And so as you are so eloquently explaining how it all works and all the layers and the departments, it's kind of like, our students are watching. How do we connect? So I was just trying to figure out a way to have them connect in real time. So when I heard about your project just now, I said, oh, wow, maybe they could. So I just want you to keep that at the top of mind.
Of course.
Any way that our students could connect so that they are really getting involved and really learning firsthand how this all works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would, another thing I would mention is that I know I graduated in 2014, but I started doing all this stuff. I guess I was doing videos on my own at that point. And I found an old video camera. It was my parents' old video camera. And I set it up and I set up my action figures and I would animate them stop motion style. And I would make these videos in my room. And I learned so much that I still rely on from doing that kind of stuff. It was not a waste of time. It was not, I shouldn't have been doing anything different. That was exactly the right thing to do, because you're just cutting your teeth and you're just kind of learning all of those ideas, yeah, everything's touched on in that. Obviously animation is the big one. This is interesting I haven't ever talked about this in with words before. So, it's like, I would have a character, I would try and make them do something. I would, animate it. I would look at it and it wasn't right. And so I would try and do it again, and I would look at it again and it wasn't quite right. And then I would come up with some idea or figure something out, do that. And then it looked right. And now that I had that tool in my bag. And so the next time I went to make a movie, I could use that same concept. To give a practical example, it would be like getting a character to jump. It's very difficult in stop animation because that requires the character to float in the air for you to get that picture. So I didn't know how to do that when I was starting. And then I started learning all these little tricks that I could start using. And one of them was that I would, most of my action figures were Star Wars. So I would take like a toothpick or some little stick, and I would find somewhere in the action figure that I could shove that toothpick, whether it was in the shoulder blades or behind a piece of armor or something. And then I could use the other end of the toothpick to hook onto the whatever object was behind the action figure. But it would be behind them looking at the camera. And so it looked like they were floating or levitating, and I could get jumps out of, that way. Sorry, that's a very I haven't thought about that for 20 years, but that's an example of that kind of figuring out a thing. And then like I'm saying, I had that tool then going forward. So I would the first thing I would say is, students, don't feel like you got to wait for anyone to start any of this. This is, you got your pencil and paper in front of you. Nowadays, we all have iPhones, and the kind of things people make on iPhones, it's amazing, right?
Yes.
Just try making some stuff and take your salt and pepper shakers and do a scene with the two of them. Show what does a scene look like if they're, having fun versus having a fight. You can get it out of just things like a salt and pepper shaker. So the first thing is, don't wait for anyone to start. And then the next one to say is that the CG community, computer graphics community, is quite active online. Mm-hmm. The piece of software most people will start with in computer animation is called Blender. And the Blender community is very active. And if you were to log onto those kind of message boards, you're going to find people who are collaborating and they are making projects. And generally that's a great place to kind of just start and be like, hey, can I help out and do something, right? And right. It can be definitely an intimidating thing, but that's how everyone learns. So you get in there and you try, and you try 3, 4, 5, 6 different things until finally you get one that is working, and then that's the one you can send in.
So you focus on earth, wind, fire, water, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So I know Nikola Tesla used to observe flowers. He used to sit and observe flowers just to, he had such great creativity, and he created that. I don't even know what the name of it's called. That big station, it's somewhere in New York where the electricity, I forgot the name of it. but he started by observing art. So if I'm a student and I want to learn how to animate fire or water or something like that, aside from the computer programs, what's a good way to practice drawing that? Because, you know, and because I don't know about you, but I have these thoughts in my mind about visions and things that I want to see, but I can't put them on paper because what I can see in my mind and what my hand is able to do, it doesn't match.
I would say that doesn't change.
Okay.
That like all the time, I see a thing in my head and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna make this, and then I make it and it's nothing like it at all. And I'll talk to artists about this all the time. I'll say, you know, like I know you were trying to draw a bird, but in all honesty, you drew a really good horse. So like, you know, like at some moment you decide, am I gonna force this to be a bird, or am I gonna be proud of the horse that I made? And that I think that's that kind of relationship with art that's very important, and very important when you're dealing with computer graphics, because I know, well, it can be a tendency of artists, that's the way to say it, to really get obsessed over individual details and things that aren't exactly the correct vision of whatever you're working on, and that's focusing on the trees and failing to see this forest that's been created. And often that forest is beautiful and unique, and the reason you didn't think of that forest was because your mind hadn't expanded that far yet. So I would say don't resist that, you know, lean into that. And so as you're drawing, with the flowers example, you know, start drawing the flower. It is an important technique to be able to you know, get a flower that looks like the flower, but at the same time, draw that flower and then look at it and say, how could I turn that into an explosion? And look at where the lines are that you've drawn, that you could change maybe one or two of them, and all of a sudden it changes into something completely different. That's like our world. It's so interconnected with each other. I don't, not to get too techie on this here, but one of the algorithms I rely on all the time is called a fractal pattern. It's a math principle, and the fractal, it is an equation. You can write it out algebra style, but that's actually that's one of like the base algorithms for design of our planet. So the fractal, if you draw it as a single line, it'll look like a squiggly line. I can use that squiggly line to be a crack in a pane of glass. I can use that to be a seashore, you know, like a sea edge. Well, I don't know if I need back. Okay. But if I turn that into, if I take the line and I turn it into a full plane, so we're going from a line to a grid, now that same pattern, it looks like the broken edge of a rock, or it maybe, or it's the same pattern that was like on the skin of an orange. It's just a much smaller on the orange. If we take that plane, and if we let that data influence a position over time, so if we use it as a basis for animation, it's actually the pattern that wind makes as it blows through leaves or it blows through trees or things like that. So I use that same pattern over time to get the, you know, or like grass in wind, the way it like kind of waves like an ocean. That's on the same fractal pattern. It's all the same math. So that's what's really kind of mind-blowing and exciting, is that math actually connects all of these beautiful things of our world together.
So so as a teacher, you know, I've taught all ages, but my favorite year of teaching was kindergarten, right? My favorite year of teaching was kindergarten, because life makes sense in kindergarten. It just does, you know, because, you know, a thing is a thing is a thing. But then as you start getting older and you're looking at, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard students say, when am I ever going to use algebra? When am I ever going to use geometry? Why do I have to take physics and chemistry? Why is this important? And I'm hoping that you, as well as Michelle and Tony, who are also techies, and LaShawn, can talk about why the connection between, because you said it so beautifully just now, but between math and art, and this is why. This is the why, because like I've experienced. I mean, I didn't take past algebra because I was terrified. If I would have had an appreciation and had my drawing book and able to see the connections between the outside world and math, that could have made a huge difference in my perspective of what math is. So I would love to hear from everybody in talking about those connections between math and art and science, because it is tangible, but we don't always make those connections.
They can be difficult to make on our own. That's true.
Yes.
You want me to start, or
Yeah,
I've kind of
sure.
been talking
You
a lot?
can
Is there
start,
someone?
and
Okay.
Uh-huh.
I'll kind of just reiterate that, or kind of underscore the point to say that the nice thing in what I'm doing, this is a very clear example, a very clear connection of physics making art. But I would say that we can also like broaden the scope so big, and we can think about anyone's profession. Anyone who is a profession. So they're let's see, maybe I'm going too broad. Let me be specific here and say you have craftsmen and you have designers, you know, in all industries. And being a craftsperson, that's usually leaning heavy. That usually leans heavier into the science and the physics part of things, the how to do it. But we fail to recognize the amount of art we're bringing to that process always. You know, if it's an electrician, right? There's a lot of rules that feel very sciencey and very kind of like math and very rigid. But at the end of the day, the electrician is using all kinds of creativity of their own personal self to solve these problems. And to me, that's art. That yes, I understand what the book said, but to actually make that happen, to actually use your hands and make that process a reality, that's an art in itself right there. And that's like, it's so important to see that everywhere and connect that and appreciate that. I don't know if that's a direct answer to your question.
No,
Tracy,
that's great. You know, that's great.
The
'Cause it is
broadening.
about making connections. Tony or Michelle, do you want to comment on that?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Michelle.
This is so amazing. Hi, Daniel. Hi. It's so funny that you mentioned that, because it actually happened to me today, where I used something that you frequently hear people saying, why are we doing this? And you know, and it was algebra, and it was just conditionals, P's and Q's. And for one thing, I would just like to point out is that you do use it in everyday life. It does just happen that you need these skills just so that you can protect yourself. You don't want other people to have to do work for you all the time, or you don't want to just have to take someone else's word for it because you feel like, oh, well, that's the math person. You can be a math person too, you know, and I love to, and I don't want to say I love to be able to, but because it's not like I'm looking for that opportunity, but there are many opportunities when people do math for me and I'm like, that doesn't add up. No, because if you do this, and then the third, this is why that doesn't make sense for me, money-wise, you know? So it is something that you use every day, and then it just changes how you think, you know, computational thinking, again, is we love to talk about with coding, and it's one of our favorite things with talking with Ms. Robinson is how you approach problems, how you come up with solutions. There are patterns in things. You start to see things in a different kind of way. And something that might have stressed you out before, where you don't know, you wouldn't have known how to fix it, you're now able to dissect it and put it into groups and you do it like without even knowing you're doing it, right? To come up with the best solution. And suddenly things that would have stressed you out before just don't anymore, because you know there's a solution for this, and we can find the solution if we just slow down and look at it.
Yes, slowing down is super, super important. I thought I wasn't a math person. When I was, so my brother's a biomedical electrical engineer and a mathematician. He's like uber smart. I love him so much, but it's disgusting how smart he is. But he sees math differently than I do. And he can see the patterns because that's the way his brain is wired. I'm more of a relational type of person. And until I understood that math was a language, I couldn't make any connections to it. And until someone spoke the math language the way I could hear it, it wasn't until then that I could make those connections. And so I feel like I know that making those connections between art, the art of the world itself, sitting and watching the wind blow, or hearing the wind blow and watching the effect of what happens when the wind blows, that's mathematical and it's artistic. And even looking at how you talked about the differences in the waves that you were using, Daniel, for the water, and looking at the different speed. I don't know if is it viscosity? Is that the word you were using? And seeing those changes, I think make a huge difference too. Yeah. Yes.
So Tracy, I just want to add to what you're saying. And at the same time, give my son Elijah, who is a self-taught animator,
Yes.
but he struggles with math a lot. And I just want to take this moment to give his teacher, Sister Charlene, a shout out because, no, actually, I think it was Sister Akila. This was last year. And she wanted to make sure that he understood the concept. So she said, you know what, draw it for me. And he created an entire comic with characters and everything and explained the concept about products. And it was amazing. He did the storyboarding and everything. And it's just like what you said, Tracy, making the connection. So because he's an artist, I guess he couldn't articulate it in class that he understood, but when she asked him, to present it in a way that he was comfortable with, he did it without a problem. And so I think that as educators, we really have to make sure that we're connecting with our students and understand our students' strengths and build on those strengths, and they'll get it. They're all brilliant in their own way. And so I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, LaShawn. And that is so important. I often, and I've taught, like I said, all ages, and even in my role as a professor, it is important for me to make sure that my students are co-creators of their own learning. But that means that I've got to be a good listener, and I've got to be a person who can respond or ask clarifying questions of my students so I can support how they learn. The how is super, super important. And I believe that there is a real opportunity, especially for our students who are participating in GED programs, to articulate how they learn so that we can support them. Yes, yes. Oh, Sister Diane says, I wasn't a math person either until I made the decision to challenge my fears. Visuals are very important in math. Khan Academy is both mathematical and artistic for visual learners who struggle with the analytical skills needed for mathematics. This is her personal testimony. Thank you, Sister Diane. Yes, yes, yes. Tony, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Oh, I echo everything everyone else said because it's so true. And then particularly being an engineer and working with students and teaching them coding, which also includes a lot of animation. They're going to be using math every day. You have to learn about angles and pixels and quadrants and axes, and all of that goes into coding. So once they're starting to learn it, they actually, you see the light bulb go off when you're working with them. And that's like the best part of my day, actually, when they really get it, we're like, wow. So they're, I echo everything everyone said.
Excellent. So Daniel, for a person, so I love the fact that you put the pipeline here.
Yeah.
I feel like every person could find themselves in this pipeline. And
I think so too.
Yeah, and just knowing that this is possible, is more. I hope you could share that graphic with us so we can, put in a poster or something like that so that folks can find their place. Are you a person who's good at production? Are you more of a person who loves stories? I love telling stories. I love storyboarding. I love hearing about stories. that may be your place. And I think that it would be important for, and LaShawn posted in the chat, thank you, asking folks, where do you see yourself in this pipeline? I would actually offer that to everyone. If you could please type in the chat, where do you see yourself in this pipeline? And Daniel, can you just go through each, just give a brief description of each part of the pipeline again?
Yep, production are the managers, and they're the people who schedule the production. TDs are the engineers that are creating the software and programs that we use to create the animation.
And what does TD stand for?
Technical director.
Got it, thank you, okay.
Yeah. Concept art, they are the painters who are the ones who put paintbrush to paper and give the first look and first ideas of what the world would look like. Storyboarding are the people who craft how the story will actually play out as a movie. Modeling creates the character models or the asset models of the world. The riggers put in the skeletons and the bones to make all of the models movable. Surfacing is the people who add color, texture, material to the world to make it look realistic. Layout is the department that handles setting up the cameras that will shoot the movie. Animation deals with the characters and giving the performances that we watch. Effects handles everything else that moves. It's really the catch-all department.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last department, lighting and compositing, they are the ones who are responsible for taking the scene that was, like we looked at the Monsters University example that looks kind of like primitive and like the Nintendo graphics, and turn it into something that's beautiful and stunning like this. They add in the sunlight, whether if that's the light source, they add, in the case of the arcade games, they add all the lights in there.
Oh.
On the right side is Moana, the big light source in the top, but then there's all these little glowing little bioluminescent things all around the room. So lighting handles all of that. And that's the pipeline. Yeah.
That's excellent. That's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to open up for questions if folks have them. If not, we're going to wrap it up. But we want to give folks an opportunity to ask any burning questions you have of Daniel, of the work that he's done in the movies that he's done. I do have a question, Daniel. Why did it take 15 years for Cars 2 to be brought to production? 15, it was more than 15 years. It was not Cars 2, sorry, Incredibles 2.
Oh, Incredibles. Oh, that one
is
a simpler answer.
Okay.
Yeah, that one is because the fellow who created Incredibles, Brad is his name, Brad Bird.
Brad Bird, yes.
Yeah, he always said that he didn't have a good idea for the second one, and so he was going to wait till he had a good idea.
Wow.
It's an easier one. That's an easier answer.
But that's an important answer. That's so important. And because Incredibles 2 is really good. It's a really good story and it's got all different nuances. And the fact that he took the time to think about what kind of story he wanted to tell, I think it says, because rather than just putting anything out there, quality does matter. That's brilliant.
That's Brad for you. That's how Brad approaches everything he works on. He's a very, very thoughtful guy.
Wow. Wow. Jason says it messed our childhood up. Making us wait. Yeah. It's great stuff. Any questions for Daniel? This is the time, folks. We're hoping, Daniel, that we can do some other workshops with you. We still have to talk about that offline, but would love to figure that out. And if, okay. So I want to ask Jason, where do you see yourself in the pipeline? And then on a practical sense, if a student wanted to intern, either for you or for anyone in this industry, what are some things they need to be thinking about? and what kind of skill set do they need to bring? And what, and if they don't have any skill sets and just want to learn, is that even a possibility?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel under-equipped to give a comprehensive answer to the question, because this is an emerging field, computer graphics. And as a result, it's everyone's path is so unique. And it's like most of us just kind of fumbling our way through, trying to work in movies kind of a thing. So the feeling of being under-equipped is giving the comprehensive answer, but I can give you a specific answer to my case. But I just want to make sure that it's clear that it's not saying that other paths have not been successful for a lot of other people. And I don't know the details. I mean, I brought in broad strokes, but I don't know enough details to really give guidance. What I would say is to start looking up animators online and connect with them on social media. And a lot of people do have biographies, and they'll talk about their path to animation. I actually will plug one social media account, Rise Up Animation on Instagram. That one is a organization of animators that are focused on finding people who just don't have like really trod paths right into the industry, because it can be kind of like confusing, like who do I talk to, what should I learn, what should I do? It's all very complicated. My path was one that I followed other people down. So I went to school for animation, and I picked a university that I knew had like a well-respected animation program. And because of that relationship, I was able to get the interview at Pixar that I needed to get the job. But again, that's my unique path. That's my one personal path. And that is me following other people down that path before. Rise Up Animation is really looking for people who they don't see someone else's trail to follow. Whether it has to do with the position they're in or the path that they want to be on. Maybe someone hasn't gone down that path. So yeah, Rise Up Animation, they post stuff all the time, and they do feature artists, and they often talk about their artists' way into the industry.
Wow, excellent, thank you. So Rise Up Animation, that's something we'll definitely look into.
Yeah.
Well, if folks don't have any other questions, we thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Daniel, for sharing your talents with us and helping me want to get my drawing book out again. I feel like that's super important, taking some time out to be outside, or to at least look out my window and see what's out there, and to work, just doing something because I love doing it. So, and that's something that came across. Thank you.
I didn't do any live drawing, but I can open my sketchbook here.
Okay.
I want to keep at my desk right here. Yeah, it's just tons of stuff, tons of random things. Here's like, I must have been probably at a museum this day.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, wow. That's really good.
Just this kind of stuff of like, I think we were at the ocean that day.
Love it.
So yeah, it's just that kind of stuff, and then just all kinds of crazy things like this too, that it doesn't really mean anything to anyone else, but to me it's about like a feeling. This is what an animator sketchbook tends to look like, even an FX Animator, that it's more about what's a line I can put down that makes it feel a direction, it makes you feel an impact, or makes you feel something, emotion. So it's very abstract and kind of crazy stuff, but yeah, anyways.
Yeah,
sorry, it wasn't a live demo.
I'm definitely getting my sketchbook out, definitely. So Tony, Michelle, or LaShawn, do you have anything to say before we leave?
No, just thank you, Daniel. This was absolutely amazing. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And and my son, he had trouble registering, but I had him sitting here, so he was watching. And it's just, it's just so great to thank you for giving us a peek into a world that we may not have ever had the opportunity to do. And so now you've opened the window, and I just hope that my students are, going to go through, look through, open the door, and all that good stuff. So thank you very much.
Yay.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Absolutely, I echo that sentiment. I actually put it in the chat. You're just so cool. You're so amazing, Daniel. Really
That's so nice of you. Thank you.
knowledge and the experiences that you're sharing with us. I don't think I ever really thought that I would have the opportunity to have an inside look on this. And, like I said before, it's something that I'd be watching and I'd be like, how did they do that? And so to hear this is amazing. And it's, makes us, I know Tony's mind is going like this too, because it's making us think more about how we can impact our students as well, and tie everything in. So
Yeah.
definitely want to ask you to do this again. Let's go plug that. Shameless plug.
Well, I'm definitely going home and try Khan Academy. There's an animation program.
Right.
So, yeah, we're gonna go do that.
Good.
So thank you.
Awesome. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for your time. On behalf of the Sankofa Global Project, Central Brooklyn Economic Development Corporation, and Digital Girl Inc., and our sponsor, Con Edison, thank you for being a part of the GED plus EdTech Physics and Art Workshop. Thank you so much, everybody. Yay!
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Okay,
Take
bye.
care. Thank you.